Imagine, if you will, a person wounded in silence. They gave love, offered loyalty, carried burdens not their own, and in return they were ridiculed. Not privately, not quietly, but publicly, with laughter and loud applause. The ones who caused the pain, they didn't hide their pride. No, they wore their cruelty like a crown, glorifying themselves for what they did. While you sat in your silence, they stood on stages built with your brokenness. While you wept in private, they celebrated in public. They rewrote the story, cast themselves as the noble ones, and left you behind as the forgotten chapter. But my friend, what if I told you that no glory built on cruelty lasts long? What if I reminded you that no triumph born from betrayal ever stands the test of time? God does not sleep through injustice. He is not impressed by shallow parades of false pride. There is a reckoning that comes not in noise, but in perfect timing. It is slow to appear, but once it arrives, it does not leave a single stone unturned. Think back to the ancient stories, the ones we were told as children, the ones where evil always appears to win in the beginning. The villain always seems confident, powerful, victorious. But what do those stories always teach us? That the arc of truth bends slowly, but it bends with force. That goodness once buried always rises again, and that those who built their towers by stepping on others will, in time, watch those towers fall. Brick by brick, piece by piece. They hurt you. They lied about you. They painted themselves as victims while you held your tongue, believing God would speak in His own time. And now you stand, watching them shine while you remain in the shadows. But let me say this to your soul. The shadow is where God does His most powerful work. The shadow is not your end. It is your preparation. Those who glorify themselves by tearing down the innocent may rise, but only so they fall harder. Their joy is brief, their victories are hollow, and the very things they cherished, the praise, the wealth, the image, the relationships, the power, those will be the first things to slip through their fingers when God begins to move. You see, God does not repay evil with evil. He repays it with justice. And justice is not a whisper. It is thunder wrapped in silence. It is the unraveling of every lie. It is the fall of every false throne. It is the echo of truth that cannot be silenced anymore. When God decides to act, He doesn't need to announce it. He just removes His hand from what He once allowed and lets the weight of their choices collapse on themselves. You must understand, your silence was never weakness. It was trust. Your pain was never unnoticed, it was recorded. Your faith was not ignored, it was storing power. And now, as they continue to exalt themselves without remorse, thinking God is absent, unaware, uninterested, He is preparing a shift that will not be reversed. God will not only lift you, He will expose what they buried. He will not only heal you, He will remove what they worshipped. Because anything built by hurting the pure does not deserve to stand. He will take what they cherished most, not out of vengeance, but out of divine correction. Because anything they treasured more than truth was never theirs to keep. So now I ask you this: will you still envy their momentary success? Or will you rest in the quiet strength of knowing that God is not done with your story? Will you cling to bitterness? Or will you release it, knowing that divine justice never forgets a name? Will you chase the same shallow glories they pursued? Or will you wait, dignified, faithful, unwavering, until what was yours returns with honor? Let them glorify themselves while they can. Their applause has an expiration date. Yours is eternal. Let them parade their victories while they can. Their crowns are borrowed, yours is being crafted. And let them believe they've won, because what God takes from them next, they will never see coming. Because when God decides to restore you, He won't need to tear them down. Their own actions will do that for Him. Now lean in. For what comes next in this divine story is not merely justice, it is a masterpiece. They exalted themselves while hurting you, but their glory was borrowed, not earned. There's a strange law that governs the universe, a law often invisible to those who are too proud to perceive it. It's the law of divine accounting, and in this mysterious ledger, every action is recorded, not by man, but by a force that cannot be bribed or deceived. When they hurt you, they believed no one was watching, but when they glorified themselves on the back of your silence, they crossed into sacred territory, a place where God Himself begins to intervene. They thought their rise was a reward for being clever, bold, unbothered. They mistook applause for approval. They confused popularity with purpose. But what they failed to understand was that some stages are traps, and some spotlights are judgment disguised as fame. You see, they borrowed their glory. They didn't earn it. They stole it from your name, your truth, your pain. They climbed by pushing you lower and then dared to celebrate at the top. Life, but borrowed things must be returned. The universe reclaims what was never theirs to keep. There will come a time as certain as the tides when their praise will feel empty, their titles will ring hollow, and the very spotlight they adored will expose them, not honor them. Because anything that rises by deceit is destined to collapse under the weight of truth. And when that collapse begins, it will not be sudden. It will be slow, humiliating, and thorough. What they cherished, the admiration, the sense of invincibility, the illusion of being untouchable, those things will be the first to vanish, and they will not understand why. Doors that once opened with ease will now remain locked. People who once cheered will now walk away in silence. Their name, once spoken with awe, will now be whispered in regret. And it won't be because of your revenge, it will be because of God's design. They don't know it yet, but the seed of their undoing was planted the moment they smiled while you wept. The harvest is coming. Not because you demanded it, not because you plotted it, but because righteousness cannot be mocked forever. The one who sees in secret also rewards in secret, and also removes in secret. They live as though they are safe, untouchable, eternally above consequences. But there is no fortress high enough to keep out truth, no title strong enough to block God's hand. And when the moment arrives, they will have no idea what they did wrong. That is the tragedy of pride. It blinds a person so deeply they forget they even sinned. But you, the one they discarded, you will not need to speak. You will not need to point or shout or explain. God will do for you what you could never do for yourself. He will take back what was stolen and give it to the one who suffered in silence. So do not chase what they have, do not envy what they flaunt, for it is not gold they carry, it is dust. And it will blow away the moment God exhales. They thought God's silence was permission, but it was preparation. There is a moment in every divine story where the silence becomes deafening. You cry out, you wait, you plead, and yet nothing seems to move. The skies remain quiet, the heavens still, and you begin to wonder, has God left me alone? Has He turned away while they mock me, rise above me, build monuments to themselves, using the very stones they threw at me? But silence, you see, is not absence. It is strategy. It is patience dressed in stillness. It is the pause before a storm that reshapes the landscape entirely. When they hurt you and glorified themselves, they looked around and saw no punishment, no immediate consequence, and so they assumed they were safe. That God, if he existed at all in their minds, had nodded in approval or had chosen to look the other way. How foolish the prideful are when they mistake silence for approval. God's ways are not impulsive. He doesn't rush to correct in the moment. He lets the proud believe in their own greatness just long enough for them to hang themselves with their own rope. He allows the stage to be set, the lights to come on, the world to watch, so that when the curtain falls, there is no confusion about who truly held power all along. They didn't realize that your pain was being recorded in the quiet corners of heaven, that your tears were not evaporating, they were being stored, that every injustice was being written down, not for your sake alone, but so that the eventual justice would be undeniable. The world would see, not because you fought back, but because God never forgot. And when the moment comes, when God finally moves, it will not be to make noise, but to make order. He will not shout, he will shift. He will not rage, he will remove. And the ones who boasted in his silence will tremble when they realize the silence was not because he didn't see, but because he was preparing the perfect time to act. To hold on, the silence is not your enemy, it is your cover. It is where strength is born and character is shaped. While they laugh, you grow. While they brag, you heal. And when the day arrives, your rise will not be noisy, it will be unstoppable. They worshipped the image they built, but God will tear it down. The world has always been obsessed with appearance. It celebrates surface over substance, noise over truth, and illusion over integrity. And those who hurt you, they learned this language well. They knew how to craft a story that favored them, how to wear charm as a disguise, and how to twist reality so convincingly that even those closest to you began to doubt your pain. They built an image, a reputation, a legacy formed not through honesty but through manipulation. And the most tragic part? They believed in their own performance. They began to think they were good, not because they were, but because others applauded the character they played. They deceived not just others, but themselves. This is what makes their downfall inevitable. Because when someone begins to worship the image they've built, they stop guarding their soul. They no longer seek truth, they seek attention. They no longer pursue justice, they chase applause. And so they become hollow, empty, a statue with no life inside. And God, who sees past the marble, past the spotlight, past the narrative, knows how to dismantle what was never real to begin with. When he begins to act, he won't touch the mask first. He'll touch the heart. He will stir restlessness where peace once seemed to live. He will allow emptiness to grow louder than praise. Their sleep will no longer soothe them. Their victories will no longer satisfy. Their mirrors will become their enemies. And what they cherished, how they were seen, how they were admired, will become the very thing that breaks them. You see, you were never fighting against people. You were resisting falsehoods. And truth does not need to fight back. It simply needs time. Because truth never dies. It waits. And when it rises, it doesn't just correct, it consumes. Their image may have won the moment, but it will not survive the future. Because God doesn't bless masks, he blesses hearts. And when he strips away the image they worshipped, the world will see what you saw all along. That glory gained through cruelty is not glory at all. It is judgment waiting for its hour. They mistook your kindness for weakness, but God saw it as sacred strength. In the world's eyes, power is loud, it is fierce, It is often mistaken for the ability to dominate or to win arguments or to strike back harder than one was struck. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sees things differently. Where others see silence and submission as signs of defeat, God sees restraint. Where others see tolerance as timidity, God sees a kind of inner nobility that is far rarer and far more dangerous to the wicked than any open rebellion. They took advantage of you, not because you were weak, but because you refused to become like them. You could have fought, you could have exposed, you could have made sure the world saw what they did, but you didn't. And that confused them. It made them feel superior. They told themselves that your silence meant they had won, that your calm demeanor proved they were justified, that your refusal to fight back somehow confirmed that they were right all along. But what they didn't realize, what they never considered, is that God sees restraint not as surrender, but as strength under perfect control. It is easy to retaliate. It is common to curse those who curse you. But it is divine to remain dignified in the face of cruelty, to choose character over chaos, and to hold your peace not because you're powerless, but because you've placed your trust in the one who is. Every time you bit your tongue instead of lashing out, God noticed. Every moment you chose prayer over revenge, heaven took record. And while they mocked you for being too soft, too gentle, too forgiving, God was preparing to reward you for being like Him. You see, kindness is not the absence of power. It is power purified. It is the force that held Christ on the cross when legions of angels could have pulled Him down. It is the same strength that allows the ocean to touch the shore but not consume it. It is holy, controlled, sacred endurance. And now, as they continue to mistake their cruelty for superiority, they have no idea that they are standing on a foundation made of lies, while you, the one they try to bury, have been quietly rooted like an oak. When God begins to move, the difference will be undeniable. What they built through manipulation will tremble. What you built in silence will rise. And the greatest irony will be this: they called you weak, yet it is you who will remain standing when the storm arrives. They mocked your downfall, but God is building your rise in secret. Mockery is one of the most vicious forms of cruelty. It does not simply reject, it ridicules. It does not just ignore, it laughs. And the ones who hurt you, they didn't just walk away, they enjoyed the fall. They commented on it. They twisted the story to make your pain look like your fault. And worst of all, they glorified themselves in the process, as if stepping on you made them taller. They saw your silence as defeat. They mistook your humility for shame. And as they glorified their supposed victory, they failed to understand the nature of God's craftsmanship. For God never builds greatness in the open. He hides it. He shapes it in caves, in prisons, in deserts, in silence. His most anointed vessels are always formed in the furnace of humiliation, isolation, and pain. So while they mocked you, while they shared stories, while they basked in their own version of triumph, God was working in the shadows, rebuilding what they tried to break, restoring what they tried to steal, strengthening the very parts of you they said were finished. And when God lifts someone, He doesn't need an audience. He doesn't need permission. He doesn't consult the opinions of those who mocked you. He simply opens the door no one can shut and raises you in a way they can't copy, can't deny, and can't destroy. The rise God is preparing for you will not look like theirs. It won't be noisy, flashy, or driven by applause. It will be deep, rooted, eternal. It will be the kind of rise that exposes their entire foundation as shallow. It will be a testimony not just of your survival, but of divine vindication. They laughed too soon. They glorified too early. And now, the very thing they thought was finished, your story, is the one God is about to use as a display of His power. So let them mock. Let them dance around your ashes, because the ashes are not your end, they are your soil. And from this soil God is planting something that will rise so powerfully they will have no choice but to watch. They used your scars as proof of your failure, but God will use them as signs of your calling. Scars have always told stories. Some wear them with shame, trying to hide what once broke them. Others display them with arrogance, as if they earned honor through the pain they inflicted on others. But the rarest kind of person carries their scars with reverence, not because they are proud of the wound, but because they've come to understand what the scar truly means. They hurt you and then pointed to your brokenness as if it were evidence you were unworthy. They saw your sorrow and called it weakness. They saw your trembling hands and whispered that you weren't strong enough. They saw your quiet tears and decided your value had expired. And worst of all, they used your scars, the very evidence of how deeply you loved, how hard you tried, and how much you suffered, as proof that you were no longer useful. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, is that every scar heaven allows has a purpose. It is not a mark of defeat. It is a testimony of survival. It is a reminder that something tried to destroy you and failed. The scar does not say you were weak. It says you lived through what others could not. And God, in His unfathomable wisdom, does not discard the wounded. He anoints them. The world glorifies the flawless. God chooses the scarred. The world selects the polished. God calls the broken, because only the scarred can speak with authority about healing. Only the ones who bled can truly guide those who are bleeding now. And only those who walked through fire can lead others out of it. You see, they believed your scars disqualified you, but in truth, those scars are what qualified you for something greater. When God looks at your wounds, He doesn't see shame, He sees permission. Permission to use your life as a vessel of comfort, wisdom, and redemption. He sees a heart that has been tested and still beats with compassion. He sees a soul that has been rejected and still chooses love. He sees someone who had every right to become bitter, but instead chose to become better. The pain you endured was not wasted. Every sleepless night, every tear-soaked pillow, every moment of questioning your worth, none of it was for nothing. For in those moments, something was being written into your soul that no education, no title, no applause could ever produce. Divine resilience. Not the kind that simply bounces back, but the kind that transforms pain into purpose. They thought you were disfigured by what they did to you, but they were wrong. You were not ruined. You were refined. And what God is about to do in your life will make those very scars shine, not with the glare of vengeance, but with the glory of redemption. The people who mocked your brokenness will be forced to watch as that very brokenness becomes your platform. They will see the one they left behind stand taller than ever, and it won't make sense to them. They will ask, how can someone so wounded be so strong? And the answer will not be found in revenge, but in grace. For the God who allowed the wound is also the God who turns it into a weapon, not of violence, but of light. He will send you back to the very places you were cast out of, not to seek revenge, but to reveal transformation. And those who knew you only in your lowest moments will be left speechless when they see what you have become. So don't cover your scars. Don't be ashamed of them. Don't wish them away. They are not stains, they are seals. Seals of survival, seals of purpose, seals that mark you as chosen, not because you were perfect, but because you were willing to endure what others used to escape. And now, God will take what they mocked and make it your mantle. They believed they were untouchable, but God will reach where no hand can hide. There is a kind of arrogance that grows in the hearts of those who believe they've escaped consequence, a blindness that convinces them they are above justice, too clever to be caught, too protected to be exposed. They walk with confidence, not because they are innocent, but because they've grown accustomed to the silence that follows their cruelty. They mistake delay for immunity, absence of consequence for divine approval, and so they become untouchable in their own minds. Too loved by people, too admired by crowds, too guarded by image, too far gone to ever be humbled. But what they forget, what they always forget, is that God is not restrained by appearances, applause, or public perception. He does not need to move through the door to enter a room. He does not require access granted by man to begin his work. And when he decides that the hour has come to correct what has long been ignored, his hand reaches not just into homes, or jobs, or relationships, but into the soul, into the hidden chambers of the heart, where no lie can hide, no pride can shield, and no mask can endure. They glorified themselves while you suffered. They built their castles, made of deception and denial, and sat atop them like kings and queens, pretending that your pain had no witness. They thought because others cheered, God had co-signed their rise. But what they failed to see was that God does not move in haste. He watches, waits, and allows the proud to climb higher. So their fall will be seen by all. And when it comes, it will not be from the hands of man. It will be by the weight of their own choices, collapsing under the pressure of divine truth. He will not embarrass them the way they embarrassed you, because God is not petty, but he will expose what they tried to bury, not to hurt, but to correct, not to destroy, but to restore balance. And the saddest part is, they won't see it coming. Because when someone lives too long thinking they are untouchable, they stop recognizing warning signs. They ignore the whispers. They silence the guilt. They harden their hearts until nothing can break through, except God. And God will break through, not with violence, but with truth. Not with thunder, but with weight. A weight so undeniable, it strips away comfort. A weight so personal, it cannot be blamed on anyone else. That weight will come in the form of restlessness, in the collapse of plans, in the disintegration of relationships they idolized, in the slow unraveling of all they cherished, the very things they once flaunted while you cried in the dark. God's justice is not loud, it is surgical. It touches what man cannot touch. He goes to the source, the arrogance, the pride, the deception, and undoes it from the inside. And when he is done, they will not be able to fake it anymore. Their strength will tremble, their certainty will vanish, and the very stage they once stood on will feel like a trapdoor beneath their feet. They hurt you, glorified themselves, and believed they could rewrite the story. But the pen was never in their hands. God was always the author. And now he writes a chapter that they cannot edit, a chapter of reckoning, of reversal, of redemption. And as he moves, you won't need to say a word. You won't need to shout, "I told you so." Your vindication will be silent, sacred, and complete. They will know, not because you proved it, but because truth echoed too loudly to ignore. They believed they were above consequence. But they forgot that no one who harms the pure, no one who betrays love, no one who tramples on kindness escapes the eyes of the one who formed the heart. So don't envy their temporary glory. Don't waste your strength on revenge. Trust that God has heard every silent cry, counted every unseen tear, and written every injustice in a book whose pages cannot be torn out. He is not just watching, he is preparing. And when he moves, even those who felt the most secure will learn what it means to face a justice that does not shout, but speaks so deeply. It shakes the soul. The untouchable will be touched, the untouchable will be reached, and those who thought they were gods in their own right will bow before the one who never forgot you. And now, as we reach the final words of this journey, I ask you to breathe, not with the shallow breath of fear, but with the deep breath of faith. Because everything they took, everything they mocked, everything they glorified at your expense, none of it is the final word. Their celebration was premature, their victory was borrowed, their image was a shadow. But what God is about to do in your life, that will be eternal, let them keep their applause. For now, let them bask in their titles and comfort. For a moment, let them enjoy the illusion while it lasts. Because the story is not over, and the author of your life is not finished writing. In fact, the most beautiful chapters begin after betrayal. The most powerful rises come after the deepest falls, and the most undeniable victories are born in the very soil of sorrow and silence. They hurt you and glorified themselves, but God took notes, God kept record. God watched as they rewrote the narrative and erased your name from the credit. And now he is turning the page, not with noise, but with undeniable power. He is taking what they cherished most, not because you demanded it, but because righteousness demands it. Your tears were not in vain. Your scars were not wasted. Your silence was not weakness. It was the preparation for a comeback, crafted by heaven itself. So walk forward, not as someone broken, but as someone chosen. Not as someone forgotten, but as someone hand-picked by God for a rise that can't be copied and a victory that no one can steal. Because when God begins to restore the one they tried to ruin, there is no force on earth that can stop him. And that restoration, dear soul, has already begun.